All right, so ready for another deep dive?
Always. Lay on me.
Okay, well, this one takes us to Jacksonville, Florida. We're looking into the disappearance and death of Savannah Gold. She was 21.
Yeah.
And this case, it really captivated the entire city. So Savannah was a waitress at Bonefish Grill, and from what we can gather, she seemed happy, doing well, and then she just disappears.
Wow.
Yeah. All we really have to go on are these scattered pieces of the puzzle, some surveillance footage, text messages, and even parts of the police interrogation with the prime suspect.
Okay, so where'd you find all this?
Well, there's a YouTube channel, JCS Criminal Psychology, and they did a deep dive video on this whole case.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought so too. So I figured, let's see if we can put these pieces together, maybe we can figure out what really happened to Savannah.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds like a real mystery.
It is. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's August 2nd, 2017. It's a Wednesday, pretty normal day. It's about 5:30 p.m. Savannah leaves her house, heading to work, her shift at Bonefish Grill, but she never makes it there.
So did anyone at the restaurant, notice she was missing right away?
Well, that's the thing. It was a slow night Wednesday, you know? So at first, the staff just figured she wasn't needed on the floor.
I see.
But here's where things get a little strange.
Okay.
About an hour and 15 minutes after Savannah left home, her dad gets a text, seemingly from her, saying she's met a guy and is running off with him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but the thing is, the text is full of typos, and the language, it just didn't sound like her,
Right.
And then, less than a minute later, her brother gets a similar text message.
So the family suspected something was off right away.
Oh, absolutely. They knew Savannah wouldn't just run off like that, especially without packing a bag or anything. And those texts, they were totally out of character for her.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So, of course, they try calling her, but her phone's off. Then they call Bonefish and find out she never even clocked in for her shift. That's when they call the police.
Wow, so she just vanished.
Pretty much. Less than 2 hours after leaving home, they find her car in the Bonefish parking lot. It's unlocked, and the only thing missing is her phone.
Okay, now that's a little strange, right? If it was just some random robbery, why wouldn't they take her wallet, her ID, too? Why just the phone?
You're right. That is a great point. And this is where things get really interesting. The police, they had surveillance footage from the parking lot. Now, most of it has never been released, but we do have a description of what it shows.
Oh, okay, I'm all ears.
So, footage shows Savannah parking her car at 5:31 p.m. Then she walks over to the silver Chevy Malibu and talks to someone inside for about 14 minutes before getting into the back seat.
Okay.
And this is where it takes a dark turn. The car starts shaking violently, like there's a struggle going on inside. The back door swings open 3 times, but each time it's slammed shut.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like someone was trying to get out, but they were being held back.
Chilling.
Yeah.
So what happened next?
Well, this goes on for almost a minute. Then the car suddenly stops.
Yeah.
A man gets out and walks over to Savannah's car. The footage is grainy, but they can see he's got short brown hair, about 5'11". He reaches into the car, grabs something that looks like her phone, then slashes her tire with a knife and drives away. It's 6:04 p.m., and that's the last time anyone ever sees Savannah.
Oh, wow. So the police had a suspect to look for, but they had to be really careful, right?
Absolutely. They couldn't let on that they had this footage.
Yeah, if the suspect found out, he could just change his story to match what the video shows.
Exactly. They needed to keep it as their ace in the hole. So they start by interviewing the Bonefish staff, asking everyone the same basic questions. When did you last see Savannah? Do you know where she is? Is there anything you can tell us that might help?
Standard procedure.
Right. But sometimes standard is effective. Within 2 days, they narrow it down to 3 potential suspects. They run their names through the motor insurance database, and boom, suspect number 3 owns a silver Chevy Malibu.
Perfect match to the car in the video.
Perfect match. That suspect, Leroy Dougherty.
Okay, so who is Leroy Dougherty?
Well, he was a manager and head chef at Bonefish, only 28 years old. And get this, he'd been secretly dating Savannah for the past 8 months, even though it was against company policy.
Wow, okay. So how did they approach him?
Well, on August 5th, they arrest him right in the middle of his shift at Bonefish.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, but here's the kicker. The charge was an outstanding traffic warrant.
Oh, so they weren't letting on what they really knew.
Exactly. It was brilliant. They take him down to the station and stick him in an interrogation room alone for 90 minutes, just letting that anxiety build.
Oh, man. I can't even imagine.
Right. You're sitting there knowing you're involved, but no idea what the cops know.
And then, to make matters worse, the same detective who interviewed him at Bonefish walks in.
Right. Talk about psychological pressure. At that point, he has to know this is way bigger than a traffic ticket.
Yeah. So where do we go from here? What happens in that interrogation room?
Well, that is a story for part 2 of our deep dive.
So they finally get Leroy in the interrogation room.
Right. And they start off with some pretty open-ended questions, like, tell us about your relationship with Savannah, or what was your interaction like with her on the day she disappeared? Nothing accusatory, just trying to get a feel for his story.
Establish a baseline, see what he offers up voluntarily.
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah. And at first, Leroy seems pretty eager to talk, maybe a little too eager even. He admits right away to that 8-month secret relationship with Savannah. But then he claims they hadn't spoken in a few weeks. He even throws in that Savannah was a heavy drug user, which, that detail becomes important later on.
Okay. So he's trying to paint a picture of her, maybe make her seem less reliable, more troubled. Is that a strategy, do you think?
Well, it's hard to say for sure, but it's definitely suspicious, right? I mean, was he trying to, plant seeds of doubt in the detectives' minds?
Yeah, you got to remember, at this point, they haven't shown their cards. They haven't told him about the surveillance footage.
Right. They're just letting him talk, watching him closely.
And I bet they're picking up on all those little inconsistencies, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They point out that Leroy claims Savannah was high on heroin that day, acting paranoid in the parking lot, but she was driving and about to start work. Doesn't really add up, does it?
No, not at all. Someone in that state probably wouldn't be getting behind the wheel or heading to their job.
Exactly. And the detectives, they use that to their advantage. They start applying a little more pressure.
But they're strategic about it, right?
Oh, yeah. They use this technique called feigned empathy.
Feigned empathy. What's that?
So basically, the detective acts like they understand where the suspect is coming from, like they're almost on their side. They'll say things like, I know this must be hard for you, or I can see why you did what you did.
Huh, interesting. So it's all about making the suspect feel more comfortable, right?
Exactly. Get their guard down, make them more likely to open up. And it seems to work, because Leroy starts to crack. He tells them he saw Savannah get into a green truck after they had an argument in the parking lot.
But the detectives, they already know this is a lie, right? Because of the footage.
Exactly. They let him go on about this green truck for a while, then bam, they drop the bomb. They tell him they have video proof that Savannah never left his car.
What was his reaction?
Well, he's totally thrown off. He tries to deny it at first, but the detectives, they just keep the pressure on. They're like, video cameras don't lie, Leroy. And they're right. Video evidence is hard to argue with.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So what's he do then?
He starts backpedaling, making excuses, saying maybe Savannah overdosed in his car and he panicked, didn't know what to do, still trying to shift the blame even though he's finally admitted to being with her.
Yeah.
But the detectives, they're nodding up. They remind him this is about finding Savannah, that her family deserves answers. And then they try a different approach. They start appealing to his sense of, humanity.
Oh, how so?
Well, they say things like, we know you're not a bad person, Leroy, and just tell us where she is.
Huh. Like giving him a way out.
Yeah, almost like a path to redemption. And finally, it seems to work. Leroy breaks down, confesses to taking Savannah back to his house. So they've got their breakthrough, but they still need him to admit to what happened next.
Right. They need more than just admitting to being with her. They need a confession.
Yeah, how do they get that out of him? Well,
Right, because if it was really self-defense, like he's saying, wouldn't he have called the police right away? Why go through all that trouble to, hide what happened?
I mean, that's exactly what I was thinking. He takes her body back to his place, keeps it there for 2 days, then burns it, dumps the remains in the woods. Doesn't sound like an innocent man to me.
Yeah, it's pretty damning. But here's the thing. Despite that confession, Leroy actually pleads not guilty at trial. Still sticking to that self-defense story.
Even though it's hard to believe, given their size difference, I mean, did he really think he could get away with that?
Well, there's something else to consider.
Yeah.
The full interrogation footage, they've never released it publicly.
Oh, really? So what, you think maybe there's something in there that could actually help his case?
It's possible, right? Maybe he takes back his confession at some point. Or maybe there's some little detail that casts doubt on the whole thing.
Yeah, I guess we just don't know. There's been a lot of talk about why they haven't released that footage, though.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Some people think it might hurt the prosecution's case, while others think the police just want to keep some parts of their investigation secret.
Yeah. Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It definitely adds another layer to this whole thing, doesn't it?
For sure. But there's one more thing that makes this case really complicated. The medical examiner, they actually couldn't determine Savannah's exact cause of death.
Wait, really? But what about all those injuries they said she had all over her body?
Yeah, the autopsy showed injuries to like over 75% of her body. It was definitely a violent struggle, but they couldn't say for sure if it was the broken neck that actually killed her.
Wow. So there's some ambiguity there then.
Exactly. And that's what the defense could have used to their advantage, right? That little bit of doubt.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, think about it. Even with the confession, the video footage, all that, there are still some unanswered questions here.
Like, what was Leroy even doing taking her back to his house? What happened in those hours that we don't know about? And why go to all the trouble of burning her body, dumping it so far away?
I mean, none of that really points to self-defense, does it?
It really doesn't. So, yeah, maybe we'll never know the whole story. But I think this deep dive has shown us how important that surveillance footage was, you know? Without it, who knows what would happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just goes to show how one piece of evidence can completely change everything. But it also shows how even a case that seems straightforward can have these twists and turns.
Definitely. And how things aren't always what they seem. Sometimes, even with a confession, the truth is still hidden. What do you think was going through Leroy's head, though, in those last moments of the interrogation? You know, when they actually show him breaking down?
Uh, I don't know. It's hard to say. Maybe finally hit him, the weight of what he'd done.
Yeah, maybe a moment of remorse or just realizing he couldn't escape the consequences anymore.
It's tough to say. But it really makes you think, about the choices people make and how they can affect so many lives.
Yeah. Well, if you're interested in learning more about this case, there's a lot more information out there. I mean, you can find details about Savannah Gold, Leroy Dougherty, the whole trial. It's definitely worth a deeper look. But for now, we'll leave you with this. If you were on that jury, knowing everything we know, how would you vote? Guilty or not guilty?
It's a tough question for sure. And it really shows how complex these cases can be, even when there's a confession involved.